Much of our work at MAS focuses on preserving valuable aspects of our urban environment while encouraging innovative developments like a new Penn that enable us to strengthen parts of the city that need it and continue to evolve as a globally competitive city. I'm pleased to welcome back to the MAS Summit our next speaker, someone who is always thinking about how to retain and advance our city's competitive edge, New York Deputy Mayor for Economic Development, Robert Steele. During his tenure in the Bloomberg administration, Deputy Mayor Steele has led many major redevelopment projects in the city, from Lower Manhattan to Flushing, to Hunters Point South, to Coney Island, to Hudson Yards. He is also responsible for the Bloomberg administration's 5-borough economic development strategy, leading efforts to create jobs, expand job training, and grow economic diversity and innovative new industries across our city. Much of Deputy Mayor Steele's work is community-focused, including his efforts to achieve the goals of the administration's new housing marketplace plan. The plan is designed to build or preserve enough affordable housing for 500,000 New Yorkers by next year. When we talk about a resilient New York, meeting the housing needs of an increasing population and finding new ways of generating continued economic opportunity are crucial challenges to face. Deputy Mayor Steele's leadership in seeking innovative growth and development has been vital to building and strengthening the diverse communities for our city. Please join me in welcoming Deputy Mayor Bob Steele to the 2013 MAS Summit for New York City. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you very much. Congrats on a great hat, too. Pretty neat. Well, good morning, and thank you, Vin, for the kind words. It's terrific to be here with all of you today and such an important and large crowd. Let me begin by first taking the opportunity to thank the Municipal Arts Society, not only for inviting me here to speak this morning, but even more important, for all the critical work that you at MAS have done on behalf of the people of the City of New York for more than a century. Had MAS not led the campaign to preserve and protect Grand Central Terminal in the 70s, we would not be here today sharing our vision for the neighborhood surrounding one of the world's most iconic buildings. And in particular, we would like to thank Vin and MAS Board Chair Eugenie Birch for their partnership and advice. Also, thank Councilman Garodnick for his leadership and input, along with Council Speaker Christine Quinn, the community boards, Borough President Stringer, preservation advocates, and the real estate industry and labor. We're continuing to shape and improve the proposal we're here to discuss, Mayor Bloomberg's holistic plan to refresh and renew East Midtown. We hope that you will see in this morning's presentation, thanks to important public input, that a plan that began with an ambition to modernize a business district has been broadened to become a vision to reimagine East Midtown as a 21st century neighborhood in every single sense. New York's history is a centuries-long story of constant reinvention, demographic, intellectual, and physical. In a recent op-ed in the New York Times supporting this rezoning, Columbia historian Kenneth Jackson aptly wrote that, quote, "A vital city is a growing city, and a growing city is a changing city," unquote. We believe that the East Midtown proposal, including the public realm study we're releasing today, will bring the right kind of change and growth to this vital neighborhood. To make East Midtown a great 21st century neighborhood requires a bold but achievable vision, not just for its buildings and mass transit infrastructure, but also for its streets, sidewalks, and public places. Put simply, to improve the quality of civic life, this administration believes you must also improve the quality of public space. This morning, we're pleased to present you with a community-driven vision for East Midtown. And importantly, it's actually more than just a vision. We have a plan to fund it through Mayor Bloomberg's rezoning proposal. It's important to consider the mayor's proposal for East Midtown in the context of New York City's economy today. By many measures, I can report that New York City's economy is doing quite well. There have never been more people living, working, or studying in New York City. Tourism continues to set new records, thanks in no small part to the magnificent new public spaces built or expanded under Mayor Bloomberg's leadership. New icons like the High Line, Brooklyn Bridge Park, Governor's Island, and the Times Square Plaza. In the last 12 years, more than 800 acres of new parks and open space have been built in New York City. We believe substantially improving the quality of life for the 8.4 million New Yorkers. Because talented people want to live, work, and study in New York City, new companies are thriving and established ones are expanding and moving here. I can report to you the city has regained more than 300% of the jobs we lost during the recession, while the rest of the country has recovered less than 100% of the jobs lost. Mayor Bloomberg has diversified New York's economy by both industry and geography. That strategy is paying off. In the last 12 years, the city's economy has added more jobs outside Manhattan than inside Manhattan, and across our city, fashion, film, design, retail, media, and technology are all increasingly important pistons for New York's economy. The technology sector is now the second largest driver of our city's economy. But while New York is clearly in better shape compared to other cities, there are also serious challenges that our economy faces. Unemployment remains unacceptably and stubbornly high, and New York's economy does not have enough of the critical skills that companies in the new economy rely on, which is why Mayor Bloomberg created the Applied Sciences Competition that will double the number of engineering graduate students and faculty in our city over the next decade. The central motivation of the Applied Science Competition was to prepare New York City for the economy of the future. This exact same motivation drives the mayor's East Midtown proposal. To succeed in the 21st century and beyond, New York will not only need the talent that companies demand, it will also need the infrastructure that they demand as well. We all know New York's commercial stock is aging, with greater than 65% of the Class A space more than 50 years old. And increasingly, New York City does not have enough of the kind of modern commercial office space that today's companies are seeking. We have consistently supported adaptive reuse of historic buildings throughout the city. The transformation of iconic structures like a Google building is part of the solution, but we also need new office stock. This is particularly true in East Midtown, which for generations has been the iconic business address, home to more Fortune 500 companies than any other central business district on the planet. A thriving neighborhood requires a dynamic mix of new and historic buildings, but in the last 2 decades, just one new major building has been built in this area. Today, companies seeking headquarters space with open floor plans, high ceilings, and other modern amenities simply cannot find it in East Midtown. The challenge we've identified is not new, and the Bloomberg administration is not the first to attempt to address it. The area was rezoned 2 decades ago with the support of MAS, and even then, there was the hope that it would cause redevelopment of the buildings and the area around Grand Central. But it did not happen. And so in 2010, the Department of City Planning began work on a study of East Midtown, a study grounded on three key principles. Number one, we believe in transit-oriented development. Number two, we believe in contextually appropriate development. And number three, we believe in pairing private development with new investment in mass transit infrastructure and the public realm. These principles resulted in a draft proposal first shared with stakeholders more than a year ago, and which, after further refinement, began the formal public review process in April of 2013. Our proposal has undoubtedly been approved by stakeholder input over the last 2.5 years. We believe it's a thoughtful and nuanced proposal, and let me just share the key elements of it with you. Our administration's proposal for East Midtown would make adjustments to the neighborhood zoning that would encourage the development of a handful of new buildings over the next decade, and then another handful in the decade thereafter. Participation in the rezoning is limited to qualifying full block sites that have the potential to produce cutting-edge, architecturally significant new buildings. Over this 20-year period, new development would add only 5% more density to the neighborhood, and that modest additional density would generate an estimated $500 million or more for new investment in the area's infrastructure and public realm. This investment would be made possible by the proposal's, quote, earned as of right, unquote, framework. Let me repeat that. A handful of new buildings, qualifying sites only, 5% more density, and $500 million for new investment. The maximum density would be considerably less than what is allowed in other key transportation hubs, such as Lower Manhattan or the Hudson Yards. You can see on this chart, coming up now, that the projected buildings that are shown here in gold for the qualifying sites are harmonious with the current East Midtown context. And you can see that the largest of the potential buildings, here on the left, which would require additional public review, is comparable to the current Bank America building on Bryant Park. So these are the key aspects of the plan, and it seems as though no one has taken issue with the core ambitions to refresh this area of our city. But the administration has collaborated closely and extensively with stakeholders because the details are important, and we've tried to be good listeners with regard to the feedback we've received. MAS suggested encouraging more mixed-use development. The administration has modified the proposal to do exactly that. The current proposal allows for up to 20% residential development on qualifying sites. Some constituents suggested the proposal should allow iconic landmarks to have new opportunities to generate proceeds with which to maintain their buildings and pursue their missions. And so a Northern Landmarks Transfer District was added to the proposal. Cardinal Dolan and Central Synagogue Senior Rabbi Rubenstein have since called this revised proposal, quote, of great importance not only to the city, but also to our institutions and our entire East Midtown neighborhood, unquote. Another suggestion was made to begin the public investment in advance of the development. Last July, in partnership with Borough President Stringer and Councilman Garodnick, Mayor Bloomberg announced the city would pre-fund a portion of those investments. Included will be critical improvements to the Lexington line at Grand Central. The pre-funded investments will also include some of the public realm concepts that we'll be unveiling today. And finally, it was suggested by many, included MAS and Councilman Garodnick, that this rezoning proposal represented an historic opportunity to reimagine the public realm of East Midtown, to make changes both grand and targeted that will enhance the livability of the neighborhood. And so the city commissioned a study by Jonathan Rose Companies and Jan Gell Architects, working with our departments of city planning and transportation, so ably led by Commissioners Burden and Sadakan, to collaborate with all of East Midtown stakeholders to imagine a vision for the East Midtown public realm. The consultants worked closely with community leaders and elected officials, conducting public workshops and numerous stakeholder meetings to gather perspective, input, and feedback. In a moment, Daniel Hernandez will unveil the findings of that process, but before he does, I'd like to add some framing perspective for you. In the last several decades, amid this city's incredibly dense built environment, New Yorkers have successfully reimagined reclaimed, and rebuilt iconic public places in all 5 boroughs. We believe that East Midtown should be no different. And so this morning, we're pleased to unveil this public realm study, which will be released in a report entitled Places for People. The vision centers on 3 key themes. First, a grand entrance to New York City, creating a setting for the jewel Grand Central. Second, details matter, a toolkit of targeted interventions that will dramatically enhance the experience of the area's public realm. And third, a connected circulation system reimagining streets and sidewalks to reflect a 21st century reality of different types of users. Let me just highlight one specific element of the proposal that we see as particularly noteworthy: converting a hidden element of Grand Central into a new iconic public space. The vision would create a new public plaza by reclaiming space that's been ceded to the realm of the automobile for decades, and which very few New Yorkers have ever visited on foot: the Grand Central Viaduct. We should all be able to walk on the viaduct, enjoying the new public space on Vanderbilt Avenue below, much like a balcony at the theater. We should be able to look down onto a newly planted and mixed-use Vanderbilt Avenue, and one day across to new buildings on Madison, all with new floors of public space at their base. Together, these multiple vertical levels of public space will create a new dimension to the pedestrian experience of East Midtown and define a new generation of public space in New York, a new way for pedestrians to experience our city. And the only proposal for funding is the East Midtown proposal that will be voted on by the City Council in November. As you will soon see, this is a bold but achievable vision to reimagine East Midtown, a vision which will enhance the neighborhood for workers, residents, tourists, and will help the city to retain and attract the world-class companies which have long called East Midtown home. This is the only proposal that has been made which generates capital for infrastructure improvements in East Midtown. This is the only proposal that has been made to bring a new vision for East Midtown's public realm to life. This is the only proposal that's been made to generate new sources of funding to support iconic landmarks like St. Patrick's Cathedral, Central Synagogue, and St. Bart's. This is the only proposal that's been made to finally address the decades-old challenge of East Midtown's office stock. This proposal has been significantly improved in the last several months, and we're committed to work with Councilman Garodnick to finalize this proposal in the coming weeks. But we believe this proposal is the best way to ensure that East Midtown's best days are still ahead of it. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you to MAS for giving us the opportunity to speak to you this morning. And now let me invite you to hear more about the New York East Midtown Public Realm Study, Daniel Hernandez of Jonathan Rose Associates. Daniel?